Paul Pierce just is like, he's on a mission these last couple days. So he recently was a dope where he was like, oh, Damian Lillard, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler bounced in the first round. And now he's back on the rounds. He was on Cameron's podcast. I believe it's Is What It Is, I think is what the kids call it. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Cameron, he is the guy who claimed he could beat Mario Chalmers in a game of one-on-one. And then when Mario Chalmers said, okay, let's do it, he then had all these stipulations and backtracking that he had to go to. He wasn't about taking on Mario Chalmers in one-on-one for, was it $100,000 that he wanted to play for? I can't remember the exact amount, but these two seem like they deserve each other on a podcast. And so Paul Pierce is out here once again trying to do the whole, I would have been better than Dwyane Wade if you give me Shaq. If you give me LeBron, I would have gone out there and I would have won all these championships, which, is hilarious. I mean, like, listen, Jalen Rose has already done the takedown on Paul Pierce's career. Dwyane Wade, twice as many All-NBAs, 3 times as many first-team All-NBAs, 3 times as many championships, 3-0 in the span of all defensive teams. I mean, Dwyane Wade, best shot blocking guard of all time. And this has been a funny thing with Dwyane Wade, where everybody likes to disparage it. And I think this is where, like, the kids, I'm going to, like, yell at the punk kids on my lawn because, the 3-point shot has become such an important part of today's game. And Dwyane Wade wasn't a good 3-point shooter. That wasn't his game. He never was a good 3-point shooter. Dwyane Wade always he used to say, listen, I'm not a good 3-point shooter, but I'm a good shot maker. And you did trust Dwyane Wade. I mean, there are a plenty of Dwyane Wade buzzer beaters with the 3 and him being able to just put the dagger in somebody's heart. But yeah, like if you're going to look at percentage or volume or any of that stuff, that wasn't his game. It wasn't. People are so obsessed with it. But like, that's the thing is like Paul Pierce had that in his arsenal and like didn't ever average more than Dwyane Wade in scoring. Didn't do it in his career. Never had a scoring champion season like Dwyane Wade did, which kind of speaks to the greatness of Dwyane Wade and the efficiency and the ferocity that he played with in attacking the rim, his ability to get to the free throw line. People want to talk about, his, my bag is better than Dwyane Wade. A ridiculous statement also, because it's not only like, Paul Pierce looks like he's the only guy that ever learned how to play in slow motion. Like he invented this type of game before. So I just think it's funny. His Petty is look, as a card carrying member of Team Petty, when he came out with the take that the Miami Heat would be bounced in the first round if they get Damian Lillard, part of me almost respected that from Paul Pierce as like his hate runs strong. The Dwyane Wade thing though is just an embarrassment. Like it's an embarrassing thing to say, if I would have had this guy, if I would have. So like it's already on its face. It's like you're admitting you're not as good a player because you're like, if this, if that, but what about just straight up body? Like anybody, you're talking about a guy, Dwyane Wade, who's top 3 at his position all time, always been a winner throughout his career. Like didn't have to wait for Kevin Garnett to come in here and just be like, now we're going to start winning. Well, I mean, and you've never had like a team that like just gets to live off the fumes of one championship quite like that team does. And the other thing that's funny about it is like, you give me LeBron. It's like, give you LeBron. Like, dude, LeBron hated you. Like the reason like you were in this situation where you had to have like your GM fleece the other GM because they were boys to actually get you a decent teammate. Dwyane Wade had players who wanted to play with him. Shaquille O'Neal wanted to play with Dwyane Wade. LeBron James wanted to play with Dwyane Wade. Nobody wanted to play with your ass. Like, forget about your rat ass city that you played with to begin with. But on top of that, who sat here and said, got to go play with Paul Pierce? It's a must. It's a must. And so I find this all so pathetically hilarious that he's out here still trying to make this a thing, still trying to make it a thing. Like Dwyane Wade at the end of it, like wasn't carrying Shaquille O'Neal into the championship. Like he wasn't quite obviously the best player on a championship team before Paul Pierce won his championship and did it at a very, very, very young age. that Dwyane Wade, when he got LeBron, he was just riding coattails, that he wasn't an MVP candidate in 2011, that he shouldn't have won, that if LeBron didn't have one of the most epic choke jobs we've ever seen, wouldn't have won the Finals MVP in 2011. I find all of this funny and like the only thing they could ever go back to D Wade is like, man, the guy was not a good 3-point shooter. That's it. Like I saw this the other day with a comparison of LeBron with his best teammates, and it's like, well, Kyrie Irving was a better shooter than Dwyane Wade. It's like, well, that's it. That's what you got. Like he was a better. Okay, but Kyrie Irving's never won anything by himself. He's honestly before he tagged up with like all of the greatest teammates, he like was consistently really, really on bad teams. Dwyane Wade never like held that, other than the 1 year where he's hurt. Everything was a disaster after the championship where they tanked for Michael Beasley. You don't have that on Dwyane Wade's resume. And so I find all of that hilarious. It's just like the disrespect this guy gets over his career for, people act like, oh, well, he didn't have this bag. It's like, okay, so he wasn't athletic, even though you go watch all these highlights of him just dunking on everybody's head. Go watch his Euro step, his over the head, his moves to the basket, his efficiency that he played with in that range. Because again, he wasn't a good 3-point shooter, and yet still was an elite scorer. And everybody's going to sit here and they're just like, man, I don't know. Yeah, but like, what about the 3-point shot? And I just think you guys playing in Legoland, like you're all just little kids in your sandbox and you just weren't there watching it. I don't know what it is, but one of the most perennial winners, one of the best scorers, best shot blocking guard at his position, always just always just lent his teams to winning and having success. And the people that he gets compared with, like, they had genuinely awful teams until they had the same teammates that Dwyane Wade did. It's crazy to me. It really, really is. But you can't coach stupid, I guess. I don't know what to tell those people. Anyway, that's another story for another day. By the way, big news. Didn't get to this weekend, but Andy Elisburg got himself a little promo. Himself a little bit of a promotion. He is, instead of the senior vice president and general manager for the Miami Heat, he is now the executive vice president and general manager of your Miami Heat. And congratulations to Andy Elisburg. Much deserved for the cap guru, the man who is crunching numbers, the man who makes things all work, the man who understands the CBA better than anybody understands the CBA. The man who was able to, Paul Pierce, when Dwyane Wade had LeBron James and Chris Bosh want to come play with him because people want to play with Dwyane Wade. He was the one who crunched the numbers to show and how they made it happen and still get Udonis Haslem under the fold and still get Mike Miller into the fold and still get Ray Allen, leaving Paul Pierce because nobody wants to play with Paul Pierce. Andy Elisburg, big props for a lot of this stuff. This guy is, just such a big part of everything that the Miami Heat do. Cool mother bleeper too. I mean, he's just got a swagger about him, got an aura about him. Heat original, like, has been here since the start. So I just think that is a really cool piece of news. Could it be also that he is, did he just, land a certain type of a whale in the near future where he has put the pieces together to get a Damian Lillard trade? One would hope. I don't know. I don't know if anything means anything here, but I just thought it was a really cool piece of news that Andy Elisburg got to get a little bit of a bump. I don't know if anybody was trying to poach him. I don't know if this is a reward. Well, clearly it is a reward, but I don't know if this is a reward for getting a deal done or if this is, somebody was snooping around Andy Elisburg and they were like, no, we're not letting this happen. The Heat OG is not going anywhere. We're not allowing that to happen. The Heat like to build within their own, man. They do, which was actually really cool. If you guys didn't see the interview I did with Mario Chalmers, recommend it. But Rio was talking about that he's had talks recently. He told this to Anthony Chang, and so following up with that about him, he's like, yeah, I've had some talks with Caron Butler, with Eric Spoelstra, that he's considering getting into the coaching side of things, which I think would be really cool. The Heat have done this. They've gone with they have built within their own as it comes to a coaching staff. And you think about a guy like Mario Chalmers who, really one of the other underrated guys that like second round pick, started a ton of games as a rookie, ice water in his veins, always clutch. Has been through a ton of iterations of the Miami Heat, whether it was playing with Flash and his, scoring champion seasons, the big three. Afterwards, the ups, the downs. He's kind of been through a lot in his career. I think the guy would have a lot to offer. I think that is was a star in Kansas, hit one of the biggest iconic shots in college basketball history. So, Mario Chalmers feels like to me a guy who could actually have a lot to lend as a coach. And I'd be curious to see where that relationship goes. I don't know where he's at or how serious he is or if he's a couple years away from getting into that. But I thought that was an interesting thing that Rio was contemplating getting into the coaching game. And, I think that'd be a lot of fun if that does come to fruition. But Paul Pierce, man, I mean, just keep continuing to just put himself out there for L after L. Again, like there is a level where I'm like, look, the guy really hates the Miami Heat. I mean, he really, really does. Dwyane Wade makes his blood boil. He doesn't try and make it chummy like I think a Kevin Garnett does, where Kevin Garnett, while KG, I think people look upon him, and KG was a better player than Paul Pierce in his career, even though, Paul Pierce is like the mouthpiece, it feels like, for that team. It is funny to look at this and be like, man, he really, like, anytime we're talking about D Wade's success or I didn't get it, like, you would think Paul Pierce like was snake bit throughout his career, right? Like he didn't get any good breaks, and he got one of the biggest breaks ever. Is that, two GMs were friends with each other. He was able to get Kevin Garnett with plenty of juice left in the tank, and he got a championship about it. But like that's not good enough. It's because Dwyane Wade was better than him. It was funny because like you have the whole thing. There's a famous thing where it's like where at the end of his career, I think it was Draymond Green who shouted him, "They don't love you like Kobe." D Wade, they did. Like D Wade, like I remember being taken aback because I was curious, like, well, what is The Last Dance, D Wade's final year of his career? What is that going to be like? And it was stunning to see how many people nationally wanted their last glimpse of Dwyane Wade and how beloved he was. Paul Pierce isn't that. He's not. Unless your last name is O'Keefe, O'Malley, O'Boyle, no, it's not like that. And they'll you'll have your little ringer jokers out there, O'Connors, O'Keefe, Simmons. He actually makes a good point. Blah, blah, blah. No.